Welcome to the X Podcast. I'm Xiomara Sosa, your host. Every week, we speak to our community members to teach them about mental health through education and awareness. Our hope is to inspire them through social change advocacy. We also bring on community members and other mental health professionals, advocates, students, and others in the mental health and related professions. Our podcast style is storytelling. Everyone has a mental health story to tell. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional and is not a substitute for psychological diagnosis or treatment. This podcast is for educational awareness and social change advocacy purposes only. If you find yourself in a mental health crisis or in distress, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room. Welcome, everyone, to the X Podcast, Real Conversations About Mental Health. This is episode number 56, and today's topic is myths and facts about mental health. I am your host, Xiomara Sosa, creator and executive director of this podcast. Our mission is to educate our communities and listeners about mental health and inspire them through social change advocacy. As a social scientist and social change advocate, I strive to have real conversations on this podcast about all things related to mental health. I'm a clinical mental health counselor, a national board certified counselor, a licensed professional counselor, and a clinical supervisor in South Carolina. As a holistic therapist, my approach is inclusive and culturally competent, and my counseling specialty is clinical mental health. My clinical focus areas are anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, gender dysphoria, and trauma and stressor-related disorders. My areas of specialization are integrative mental health, multicultural counseling and therapy, and women's mental health. As a United States military veteran who served in the Army and Air Force, I celebrate diversity, I honor and promote equity, and value inclusivity in all communities, but especially in our marginalized communities. I'm the founder, owner, and clinical director of Somerville Women's Mental Health Services, which is now a teaching practice here in the Low Country of South Carolina. I'm also the founder and executive director of a nonprofit organization called the X Studio, a mental health cooperative, which is a place for mental health interns and licensed professional counselor associates to start their journey as the next generation of professional mental health clinicians. Today, I am joined by my co-host, J Rock, who is going to introduce himself. And then we also have a special guest. I'll let her introduce herself. She was going to be an intern, then she wasn't. Now she's a volunteer and an all-around supporter, right? So we'll let her introduce herself when she's ready. J Rock.
All right. Well, yeah, I am J Rock, co-host and technical advisor, and been a big broadcaster. Been doing broadcasting for about 20 years, so I'm all about audiophile. I'm just love everything about it. And but most importantly, though, one thing I love the most about is self-growth, and definitely being a part of this podcast helped me learn a lot, growing every episode, taking notes, a lot of things I learned and a lot more things I had to unlearn. But as always, I'm always just looking to improve, and this podcast is the podcast for me. So I appreciate being here as always.
Yay. Hey, Kiki.
Hi guys, I'm Kiki. I wanted to be an intern. I can't be an intern, but I'm a volunteer. I love all things mental health, and I love supporting the mental health initiatives that are happening here. So I'm just really excited to volunteer.
And we love to have you here. Yeah, we do. Yeah, I mean, we lament that you can't be an intern because we were all very excited, and so were you.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good deal that came up for you, and I'm glad that it's there and you're taking advantage of it, because you guys need all. When I meet with the interns, I just met with an intern before you guys were all here, and she drove all the way from Orangeburg.
Oh, okay.
And had the saddest story. I just fell for her, but it's such a thing now. We talked about last time.
Yeah.
Remember about how hard it is for them.
Right.
And why are these I don't think it's the counselor educators that make it hard, but I think that it's a different world for them. And so the expectations of what they think things need to be like, and then what the real world is,
right? Yeah.
Doesn't match up, right, Kiki? And it just makes it hard. So I am here to change that. That is why I am shaking it up with the X Studio. I'm making it different. So that's a co-op for all of them, so that it'll stop being so problematic for them. So we'll see where it goes, right?
Right.
All right, guys. So today we are talking about the mental health myths and facts, which is a lot of them. All right. So my first question, and this is a serious question. Can you tell the difference between a mental health myth and a fact? What do you guys think? Well, we can, because that's such a grease, so we should be able
No,
to.
I already know I can't. I'll tell you right. I'm like, I'm just, still learning about everything. So I'm sure there's probably going to be some things that I'm like, oh, that was a myth. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of myths about it.
Yeah.
And then, with the advent of the internet now, it just sort of like makes it worse. And then sometimes better because they teach people things, but then those things get misconstrued, right? Because everybody's narcissist. Everybody's what now? What's the new one?
Gaslighter.
Everybody, and
okay.
they just misuse everything, thinking that if they're having like a throwdown with somebody, oh no, man, that person's narcissist. Like, it can't just be that the person can't stand you. Like, maybe that's what it is, Yeah. But it also does help a lot of people who really are dealing with the seriousness of being with someone who is. So it's very interesting. All right, so we're going to talk about that. So mental health myths really create misunderstandings and stigmas, and that's the problem with that hinder seeking help and support, which is true, because think about that, especially in our communities of color, immigrant communities. Like, you don't do that. Like, you just especially now it's a little bit different because we're changing things a little bit. But like in our world in the Bronx, you went and you spoke to either the pharmacist. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why. The pharmacist was the guy that you talked to, or the priest at the Catholic Church. That's it.
Okay.
Or the Catholic Church people. Like those are the people you talk to about all those things. You do not go to the psychiatrist. It's different now. People are different now. But a lot of that had to do with the myths, right? The things that weren't factual, the misunderstandings, that's what causes a lot of the stigma. So the belief that mental health issues are a sign of weakness is inaccurate. Mental health struggles can be caused by a variety of factors, right? Like J-Rock's been learning. Genetics, we did a whole one on that. Environmental stressors, we talked about that. And life experiences, right?
Right.
The idea that only people with severe mental illness need counseling. This is the hill that I will die on. Okay. The idea that only people with severe mental illness need counseling and therapy is so false. It is so false.
Absolutely.
Right, guys?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, J-Rock.
I'm on it.
Counseling or therapy, we use those words interchangeably, can be beneficial for anyone seeking to improve their well-being and cope with stress. So J-Rock says that all the time so well. You say that so well. Self-development, self-improvement, working out some stuff, unlearning things. That is all part of mental health. You do not have to be in crisis. You do not have to be in a mental health crisis, in a relationship crisis, in any kind of crisis to seek mental health services. That just seemed, it's kind of like the medical model was built on the whole illness, emergency, fix, save. So we as a society, that's what we did. We just let things go until we need emergency services. So they're so good at fixing you, right? They're so good at finding that thing that's wrong, giving you the medication, and bless their hearts, because that is how we're trained in this country. That is what they know. That's their jam. So emergency room, just urgent care, like these people that find out what's going on, they are trained to save your fucking life. That is what they're trained to do. But to do the day-to-day everything, nutrition, prevention, all that, that's the least of the things that they are really good at doing, and that's been changing a lot now, and that's a good thing. But that's not our model in the West in general, right? Like that's just not what it is. And mental health is right up there with it. That's how it used to be. So prevention and intervention, where you don't talk about it, you don't go, you don't do, you don't whatever. But then when someone's having a psychosis and they're trying to jump off a building or something, or then we want to get them help, and then how do we help them? We lock them up. How do we help them? They go to the psych ward because they're at such an extreme that that's what you have to do to keep them safe and to keep everybody else safe and to bring them back out of that mental health emergency. So that's why the myths are problematic. Right, guys?
Right.
Very problematic.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to be referring to an article called Myths and Facts About Mental Health. I found it on psychiatry.org. And it's by the American Psychiatric Association, and the date is March 5th, 2025. So I'll be talking a lot about that article. So what defines our mental health? Okay, I'm going to leave that up to you guys. What do you think defines? And you can cheat and look at the notes. But if you didn't have the notes, what would you think the definition of mental health? Because did you know before you went to school what the actual real definition of? They didn't teach me the definition at first.
No.
Did they teach you?
I don't I mean, yes and no. It just, they said it was derived from the word guidance, guidance counselor, guiding people. But then, it evolved from just guiding someone to, we need to help them cope. We need to help them build the skills. We can't just tell them do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So, I mean, theoretically, they just kind of explain the process. There's no
Yeah. So if you're hanging out at the schoolyard,
Yeah.
right, and you're at the schoolyard and you say all that, they're going to be like, girl.
Right.
what are you talking
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you want somebody to understand what you're talking about when it comes to mental health, it's like, how do you even?
Yeah,
How do you
it's
even?
like, how do you,
Yeah.
Like,
what do you
they,
do?
what do you mean you're a clinical mental health counselor? What is that?
Right.
Are you a psychiatrist or you're a psychologist? Or
Yeah.
It's all psychology. We're all therapists, but
Yep.
psychiatrists do something different than psychologists. And I mean, we all do the same thing in many ways. And then we all do something very specifically different in many ways. All right. So the definition. So how we navigate our emotions, especially during stressful times, defines our mental health. So if things are going great and we're doing great and nothing's bothering us and we're just cruising along, then hey, our mental health is good. But if we just got into a car accident, we just had a miscarriage, we just lost somebody, something traumatic happens, what's our mental health going to be like? Not so good, right?
No.
Not so good. That does not mean that there's something wrong with you. That something's wrong with you and we need to help you get well. That just means that the stressor of whatever's going on is changing the way that your mental health is existing within you right now. It's the definition of how you're existing within those environments. So it is very nuanced. There is there's no black and white answer to that. There's no real way of knowing what terminology is going to fit it best because it's so fluid.
Right.
It's so fluid. And then what your good mental health for you is going to be with your challenges or your barriers or your limitations is going to be very different than maybe Kiki's, right? Who might not have those sorts of things and might be able to have a different experience in what her mental health is going to be. So it's all very, it can be kind of tricky, but at the end of the day, it really does deal with how we're navigating our emotions, especially during hard times, difficult times. That really defines, like I'm looking, when I used to do the Red Cross crisis mental health stuff, that's what I was looking for. Remember we did a little episode on that?
Yeah. Yep.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for all the people who are just dealing with this natural disaster, this fire, this thing, whatever it is that they're going, and I need to do the crisis counseling. I need to do the disaster mental health. I'm looking for the person that's showing the most distress in their mental health. And it might look like somebody sitting in a corner not talking, and maybe someone who's untrained will look at that person and say, okay, they're calm. We don't know. They might be catatonic. They might be in shock. How would you know that? How would you know what to do and what not to do with that, right? Other people might be fine and not have any issues. And that's what you're assessing is the mental health of these people so that you can give them the first aid that they need, the mental health first aid. Okay. So you're looking at the emotional expression of what the experience is that they just went through and they're going through. So whether you're feeling happy, stressed, bored, or something else, all feelings, positive or negative, they're all a natural part of being human. Yet people question themselves when things feel overwhelming. That's a toughie because, especially in our country, we sort of promote being happy all the time. And if you're not happy, pursue happiness and you have to be happy. And what's wrong with it? And that is such a false, unsustainable thing to be sort of making a society think that if they aren't, then they're failing. They're failing or there's something wrong with them. By the nature of being a human, that is ridiculous. Like we live on a spectrum.
Right.
Our emotions are not going to always be the same. Our feeling. What do you guys think about that?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Like, because I used to think about that too. Like all of the things that, at least here, that the society was pushing. It's like, okay, if you're not happy, like, okay, what's going on? You're supposed to be happy here, and that's kind of what some of the things I had to unlearn because I was like, so it's okay to have good days, bad days.
Yeah, and it's normal to have good days and bad days, and some people do anything and everything to not feel the discomfort.
Yep.
Right. And that's where we come in. Like, that's where mental health counselors come in. Okay. It's like, do you have the coping skills to deal with the fact that you're not feeling good, that you are feeling agitated, that you are feeling blue, that you are feeling down, that you are feeling a little depressed and whatever, before it gets clinical. Like, we don't want you to have to go see the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't want that. I mean, we want you to if you need to, but it shouldn't be like, let's just wait and see until they get so bad that then we have to send them to the psychiatrist and get medicated and like, so that we can then do our job. So, I just think that's important to know. So there are myths around mental health that can stop people from seeking help. We're going to talk about some of them. We're going to talk about those things. All right. So we're going to do like, the concept is going to be myth or fact, right? Okay. So, or myth and fact. So the first myth, mental health issues can affect me. What does that mean? Can't affect me. I'm sorry. Okay. Mental health issues cannot affect me. They will never affect me.
No.
What do you think, Iggy?
That is a myth because you can't be fully healthy if your mind and body aren't both, in a good state. There's no way your mental health will absolutely affect the way you move through life, because by definition, it's your emotions and how you deal with a certain situation. There's no way if you're feeling sad and upset, that wouldn't affect you.
That you're not affected.
Exactly.
So there are people that say, I'm unaffected. You're unaffected. And there are some things that don't affect people, and there are other things that do. But there are people in life that literally put themselves out there as being stoic. Nothing affects me. I am completely unaffected by all these emotional people around me. Touchy-feely people. Not true. By the virtue of the fact that you are unaffected tells me you are affected by emotions.
Clock it.
The fact that you are shutting down and feeling nothing and being unmoved by the fact that A, B, and C is going on tells me that you are affected by. You may not be crying and showing all that, but you're so shut down because you're not dealing with anything. You're not dealing with anything. That is an effect of not dealing with mental health.
I see.
Is you just go... You go, what do they call it? You just go dark.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you just
get
kinda,
numb to it.
Yeah. And you just live your life, and you just, dot your I's and So the fact that contradicts that is mental health issues can affect anyone. So in 2020, nobody's above it. Nobody is above it. So these people that run around saying they're above it, that does not exist unless you're a unicorn on Mars. It does not exist. Everybody's affected by mental health. So in 2020, about 1 in 5 American adults experienced a mental health condition in a given year. 1 in 6 young people has experienced a major depressive episode. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's, in our country, is so prevalent. And it shows up so different for young people. What it looks like in young people: anger, violence, nonconformity, just being of conflict, just defiant. Like it shows up. Drug use and abuse, hypersexuality, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So much of that has an underlying depressive tone to it, but it doesn't look like the stereotypical what people think depression is. So, all right. So 1 in 20 Americans has lived with a serious mental illness, such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and or major depression. That's a lot of people. That means we all know people. All of us. Yeah. Right? If you know 20 people, then you know someone. If you have 20 people in your family, then you know someone who has dealt with major depression, and it looks different for everybody. So, and that's a very serious, like we talked about last week, that's a very serious medical illness that has, it's a medical condition. It's a medical illness that has psychological symptoms and effects, which is why it's under our DSM. That's why we get to manage it too. But it also is medical, and the medical community, we work with them. Right. It's a joint effort to try to help people, just like postpartum depression is. It is both, and we deal with both. Each of us have our specialties for it, but we work together. If I'm helping someone with major depression, and they're not having any kind of licensed medical treatment, it's going to be pointless, and vice versa. So it's always good to see both. Okay, so suicide is a leading cause of death in the United States. It was the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 20. 10 to 24. So that's our young people. The second leading cause of death is suicide in the United States. I believe it.
I do
People
too.
don't want to believe that. They don't show it. They don't talk about it. It's not a thing.
Right.
But it is true. So suicide has accounted for the loss of more than 45,979 American lives, and that was in 2020. Nearly double the number of lives lost to homicide. More people are killing themselves than are being killed. And we see the people being killed all the time left and right on TV.
For sure.
But they don't show the other stuff, right? We don't know that. We do in our I don't want to say business, but in our profession.
Yeah.
But that's not what sells, right? That's
Right.
not what's
That's the-
popular.
yeah.
That's not
Right.
what's,
Yeah.
that's not what's not what's cool on TV.
Yeah.
So myth or fact? Children don't experience mental health issues.
That's definitely myth on that one.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm going myth.
Myth?
I got to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Myth? Kiki?
It's a myth.
Yeah.
Absolutely. After what we just heard.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I gave him the answers.
Gave
She gave us the answers. I gave you the cheat sheet. So the fact is, even very young children may show early warning signs of mental health concerns. These mental health conditions are often clinically diagnosable and can be a product of the interaction of biological, psychological, and social factors. So what the hell does that say, Kiki? What does that mean? What does any of that mean?
Basically, it can happen because it's genetic, something genetically was passed down to them, or it can happen because of their environment, their social environment. Kids learn definitely from their parents. So what they see, they emulate, are things that they notice. So probably that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, 100%. I know people. Definitely, I know people.
You know people?
Very close to me that from their parents, and it's kind of like when you see them, and it's like, yeah,
That makes sense.
Makes
yeah,
a lot of sense.
Yeah. I feel, and again, that's the fact. That's not the myth. Yes, young children show early signs of mental health concerns. They always do. Because they've still not, first of all, because we regulate them. They don't self-regulate yet, right? So by nature, adults should know how to self-regulate anyway, and we model to them. And the way that children learn to regulate or get regulated is when an adult is around them and they're able to regulate themselves by us being regulated. So that's why you'll see when children are having tantrums or they're having a fit or they're freaked out about something, you'll see a mom, an adult, an auntie, somebody will pick them up, sit them down, look at calmly, try to regulate them by showing that they themselves are not completely dysregulated. Because imagine doing that, then you'll have the two of them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
just by nature, that's just generally what mothers tend to do, what aunties tend to do, what parents tend to do, what elderly people, because we've learned to do that. And that's just sort of like the way the social setup is that children get regulated by adults. But the opposite happens too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So if they have parents around them and people around them who are violent, who are watching violence, who are always arguing, who are fighting, who are throwing whatever, what's going to happen to that child? He's going to be dysregulated
Yeah.
and act. And he's going to start showing signs of not being able to manage day to day. So that's his mental health being all
Yeah.
muscular. And that's why it's important to be careful what we do
Yeah.
around kids, right?
Absolutely.
So half of all mental health disorders show first signs before a person turns 14 years old. And 3/4 of mental health disorders begin before the age of 24.
Man.
Like, damn, Debbie Downer's back. Damn.
Oh,
I'm the
wow.
Debbie Downer around here. Yeah, only half of
insane.
children and adolescents with diagnosable mental health conditions receive the treatment they need. And that's a shame.
Yeah.
And that's a shame because the parents think it's, the stigma, or they don't believe in it, or they agree with it, or they don't want so-and-so to talk about their child and whatever in the hell else. It happened in my family, I remember it, and for something as simple as dyslexia. Like, we just wanted to get Alexia's dyslexia officially. That's my niece. She was a little kid and she was having trouble. She wasn't having trouble. She was like uber intelligent, which is like the misinformation about people who are dyslexic, that they're somehow not intelligent. But the fact is that they're more intelligent. They're almost genius. But because of the way that the learning is set up, that's not how their brain works. And then so
Right.
everything is it just gets all mumbled in their brain. So they need to learn how to adjust to the way that they're taught in order for it to even out. So if they don't get that, then they flunk out of school and they don't learn how to they overcome. All of that happens, and then what happens? The sort of like, what is that called? There's a name for it, where you kind of say something about somebody that isn't true, and then eventually they start believing it because now you've proven, okay, now they're right. I did fell out of school. I must be stupid. That's not why. If you have dyslexia, that's not why that's not why. So anyway, but we had that in our family, and I had to literally pay for that thing. It was like, I remember $1,500 for it. That special, and that was way back in the 90s.
Man.
And it was like $1,500 to have a specialist do the assessment for dyslexia on her. And the mom didn't want to because, what people would think, and I don't want the label, and whatever else argument they can have. So I said, fine, I'll pay for it. And the guardian ad litem said, okay, let's do it. And we did it. And it came back. They had it. And so the only thing was a tutor. We needed a tutor who understood this kind of thinking, what dyslexia was about, and how you tutor a person to adjust to the learning environment that isn't meant for the way that their brain processes information, so that they don't end up being the failures.
Yeah.
Right? So they did it, and now we all know Alexia's Miss Smarty Pants, so she's like Miss Smarty Pants and Bossy Pants, you know? So she grew up, and it's like she's got it under control. But that's just a minor thing. So imagine if a child is expressing anxiety or anything else that they express, and people and parents, and it's hard. And so anyway, so early mental health support can help a child before problems interfere with other developmental needs. And that's what we're saying. If you can sort of do the intervention as soon as they start showing signs, then you can prevent so much for the rest of their life in doing. Because kids are going to figure out how to overcompensate. They're going to figure out how to self-medicate. Yeah. They're going to figure out how to numb themselves from whatever the hell it is that's going on. Yeah. They're going to do it. And so you don't want them to do that, Right. You want them to learn the right way to do it so they can be successful. That's all I'm saying. All right. Myth or fact. People with mental health needs, even those who are managing their mental health conditions, cannot tolerate the stress of holding down a job. People with mental health needs, even those who are managing their mental health conditions, cannot tolerate the stress of holding down a job.
Oh. So basically, if they know they have it?
If they have something, they've been diagnosed, and now they're managing it, can they work? Or can you just fire them because they have this thing and you don't want them there because God knows?
Oh. I think I would say that's a myth.
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards myth, right? Because I'm thinking you can... I know.
So if you have anxiety and your anxiety is under control, clinical anxiety, if you have postpartum depression and it's being handled, because the whole point of mental health, when you go to mental health, is to go into remission, right? Yep. So if you go into remission, you can work. Yeah. So if someone has a physical ailment, I don't know, they can't work because they have chronic fatigue syndrome. I don't know much about that, but say they were able to go into remission. I don't know that you can or not. I'm just using this as an example. Yeah. And you know that, and while they have chronic fatigue, they're not going to be able to work. They can't do anything. They can barely get up out of bed because the pain is too much, right? Yep. And they're too tired, they're too exhausted. It's like it is a disorder. It is a medical condition. But if they get treatment, and let's just say they go into remission, and now they don't have chronic fatigue, can they work?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So then why wouldn't we think that someone with mental health can work, right?
Right.
Because of the stereotypes that are out there about people that have, oh no, they're going to lose their shit and then come over here and attack everybody.
It's the going postal. Isn't that where it came from, right?
Yep. All right. So that is a myth, what I just said. People with mental health needs, all of that is a myth. What is a fact is that people with mental health conditions can be just as productive as other employees, especially when they can manage their mental health condition. Well, employers often do not know if someone has a mental health condition. That is the truth, because what do? We hide it. We don't want them to know because we don't get fired
or need this job right now.
Yeah. So, but if the condition is known to the employer, they often report good attendance and punctuality, as well as motivation, good work, a good job tenure, and on par with or greater than other employees. Because they want to succeed. They don't want that thing to take them down, so they make an extra effort for the most part when they can. Not everybody can. But if they can and they're working and they're busting their ass, they do. Usually better than the guy next to them that doesn't have.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that I thought that was a good one, because a lot of people think that. A lot of people think it. All right. So myth or fact. There's no hope for people with mental health issues. Once a friend or family member develops a mental health condition, they will never recover.
Oh, that's
that's a
good.
myth.
Good, J-Rock.
We're going myths. Yeah,
All right. The fact is that studies show that people with mental health conditions get better, and many are on a path to recovery. Recovery actually refers to the process in which people can live, work, learn, and participate fully in their communities. There are more treatments, services, and community support systems than ever before, and they work.
Yeah.
So when we're defunding them, as people are trying to do right now, what do you think is going to happen if you defund this? If you make this a problem for people? What kind of, we're going to go right back to the 1970s and 80s when what happened because of this. Yeah. So, all right. Myth or fact? Therapy and self-help are a waste of time. Why bother when you can just take a pill?
Myth.
That
is wild.
What do you mean I can't take a pill?
Take a pill for this? Y'all got this in the back?
No.
That's a myth. The fact is that treatment for mental health conditions really varies depending on the individual and depending on the individual and could include medication, therapy, or both. I am a big fan of both when there's a crisis or when it's really acute or when it's really gone beyond and it is now in a clinical state. I am a big fan of both at the same time and then maybe getting off if you need to.
Yep.
Not everybody needs to get off though, and that is okay. Because if I needed to have insulin for the rest of my life for my diabetes so that I can live and have a happy, cool, even keel life, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna take my insulin for the rest of my life. So if I need to take an antidepressant to regulate my brain and what it's doing so that I can live a relatively good life, I'm gonna do it. But not everybody needs that.
Yeah.
Right, Kiki?
No.
Yeah. All right. So, myth or fact? I can't do anything for a person with a mental health issue. I can do nothing for you.
Oh, like a friend? Like if you're like, or
Anybody.
or anybody?
Yeah, your friend, your sister, the guy, whoever.
Oh, yeah.
That's a myth.
I'm gonna go myth with that.
Like any little thing can help
Yeah,
increase
just kinda-
someone's mood or make them
Right,
feel
just being,
better.
helping them
Even
feel
just
good in
being
some way,
there.
a compliment or something like that. Like you're doing a good job today,
Or even sitting and doing a podcast. You can
Oh,
cheer somebody
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah. Or just sitting with them.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
You just
Yeah.
sit with them. You just
Being
sit. They see you. They know you're there. You don't bug them. They don't want you to bug them. They
Right.
just need to know that someone's there sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Without them being bugged by that person.
Right, right.
Other people need more than that, So, that's a myth. The fact is that friends and loved ones can make a big difference. In 2020, only 20% of adults received any mental health treatment in the past year, which included 10% who received counseling or therapy from a professional. So friends and family can be important influences to help someone get the treatment and services they need. So what they're saying is, I'm that person, but I know a lot of people who are like that too, and I also know a lot of people who are the opposite. Most of us are going to want to help the person suffering to go get the help, whatever it is, right? So if you see me suffering with severe depression and you see all the classic signs, like we talked about last week,
Right.
when I was caring for my parents, and you're a friend and you love me, you're going to want to see me. Your support is likely going to help me get out of that bed, get out of the room, go see the doctor. You're going to go with me to the doctor. You're going to ask me what's going on with you. And that's going to help me on the road to recovery. But if you just let me languish in there in my, what are the chances? So that's what they mean by that. And so most people use that excuse. There's nothing I can do about her or what then. They're choosing, they're an adult, they're in that whole thing.
Right.
Because they're not looking at, it's such an invisible illness that they're looking at it from almost like a flaw. Oh, look at the flaw in that person. Look at that shortcoming in that person. Oh, that person, like instead of looking at it like, maybe if I go in there and check on them and let them know, hey man, do you want to, you want me to go with you? Or you want me to make the call for you or something like that? That's going to help this person. And you might save a life.
Yeah.
You might save a life, Sure. So, all right. Fact or myth? I can't, oh wait, we did that one. All right. So some of the ways, I just want to give some examples before we leave this topic. Reaching out and letting them know you're available to help. Helping them access mental health services. That's a big one. If you don't know how to do that, then you can learn how to do that.
Yep.
And then you do it for them, right? Help them learn self-care and coping techniques if you know how to do it. If something works for you, like for J-Rock, a lot of the the physical stuff works for J-Rock. So if his friend is in some kind of state of mind, if maybe getting him to go do some movement with you is going to help him relieve some of those symptoms, then that's what you say. Hey, man, you want to come with me to the gym?
Yeah.
You want to come with me? I'm going to go take a jog in the park. You want to go with me and then just sit here and wait for me and just sit here. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Like those are all ways that we can help. You don't have to be a mental health clinician. You don't have to be a medical clinician to help. You can do those things.
Yeah.
Hi, Aunt. Aunt just got here. We're talking about myths and facts about mental health.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. So learning and sharing facts about mental health, especially if you hear something that isn't true.
Okay.
So somebody's telling you that so-and-so has, I don't know, depression. We're just going to use depression because that's my thing. So so-and-so has depression, and that's not something you can do anything about. You just got to let them kind of work it out, blah, 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 blah. That's not true, right? So if their partner is believing that nonsense, no, nothing's going to work. You just got to let them work it out. They're going to be in the room. They're going to do it. But you know different. Then you can do something to help that person who's in that state.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, man. I mean, I can tell you from a personal experience when I get in my, you know.
Yeah, I know.
He's just sad. It'll play out.
It'll work.
Sometimes it does. But again, that's sometimes, not all the time.
Not always. Yeah, exactly. And if you can, and I think that the thing is that if there are things that are untrue, that are keeping that person from getting support, help, relief, anything like that, and you know those things aren't true. Because it's different, like in our communities where everybody used to believe there's nothing you can do about it, you just, that's different. But if some of us know different, like now that you're on the podcast and you're Mr. Mental Health Guy over here.
I'm learning.
And you're in a situation and you could be, I think that if we do A, B, and C for him, that might help. And they might say, how do you know that? For years and years, this is how we've dealt with him, whatever. You can say, I've learned from this podcast that I'm on that if we try this, that, and the other, that might help. Let's try it and see. Let's see if that works.
Right.
Because sometimes people just don't know. They believe the myths.
Right. Yeah.
So you got to be like that beacon of knowledge for them. All right. So treating them with respect, just as you would anyone else. Nothing pisses me the fuck off more than people being disrespectful towards somebody suffering with a mental health condition. I want to punch you in your throat when I see that.
Right.
Just the way that I feel when they're doing it to homeless people on the street who are like the most vulnerable individuals on the planet.
Right.
And you're talking nonsense about them, and you're treating them badly, and you're just abusing them or whatever. Like nothing upsets me more than people doing that to the vulnerable persons in our population. But people with mental health and mental illness is the same thing. Like, so you see somebody in their worst condition. So say you're seeing somebody having an episode of psychosis, which we see a lot, right, in homeless people, because we all know why they're homeless a lot of the times, right? So they're not having treatment, they're not whatever, and it just gets progressively worse. And if you see them having an episode, it's scary. It is scary.
Yeah.
That's not a myth. It can be scary, but it is a myth that they're shitty people, they're nasty, don't let them around you, let's kick them, whatever the hell it is that everybody does, like they seem to think that violence is the answer for them. That is a big no. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know where that started from. Like, where did we normalize doing that to people on the street or sick people or ill people? I don't know. Where did that start?
You know what? That's a great question, because it's something that, like, I don't know, maybe it's just in the society that we see, maybe like I don't want to say TV, but maybe like that has something to do with it, or the things that we consume. Where you going? Okay.
It's like, it is a societal thing. Like, oh, you don't have a house, you did something wrong with
Right.
your life.
Yeah. Like,
You're lazy, get a job.
Yeah.
Mom didn't raise you right.
Yeah.
Those things.
Have some self-respect, or
That's
whatever the hell it
that's
is.
it.
I'm sure you're going to use that money to go do drugs, like all of that. Or
Right.
go
That's
drink
fine.
and whatever.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, and I'm not saying, listen, don't come at me, that is can't be dangerous, and that you should be doing this with everybody. I am not saying that.
Right.
But like the local guy in your neighborhood who you see in the corner suffering because he has nowhere to go and whatever, and maybe he does have mental illness, or maybe he does have whatever it is that he has, that does not automatically mean there's nothing we can do to help him. He's a lost case. Let's treat him like shit anyway because of that. and make up all kinds of stuff about him. Right. Those two things are not the same. It's one thing to want to be safe, because everybody needs to be safe. I advocate safety. And especially if you're not a trained person and you don't know how to manage these sorts of things, and you should not be putting yourself in a situation that might be harmful to you. But that's very different than believing that anybody with all mental health conditions, especially the ones that we see on the street, are dangerous. So we better not do anything. We're going to kick them and we're going to get them out of our neighborhood.
It's horrible. When I was little, there was this guy who had a mental health. He clearly had mental health issues, but he would stand outside of Food Lion, and I would walk there. And he loved me and my sister, but everyone treated him like a weirdo. And we would wave at him. And I went in with my aunt one day, and she was short on change, and he just happened to be inside the store. He wasn't usually in the store, but he took out change out of his pocket and gave it to her. And it was just like, if you guys just treated him nicely, he says weird things sometimes, and he does weird things, but he was really sweet, and he was there to give us some change.
He was compassionate. Which most people aren't. I don't know where that connection, I mean, I'm sure, who knows, this could be a whole nother podcast. But, refusing to define them by their diagnosis, or using labels such as crazy instead of first person language. People do that a lot. Oh, she's just fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's a crazy person.
First of all, stop. A person who's truly crazy, that only means that they are out of touch with reality in terms of their psychosis, which is an illness. Why would you think that's funny or something to weaponize against somebody? I don't know. I don't like it. We do that as a society. I'm not above it. I've done that just in jest. Oh my God, stop being so crazy. We've sort of taken that word and made it, I don't know, we've normalized weaponizing it when it's really one of the worst conditions that anybody can live with.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's I don't know what that's about. But if you know someone around you who's been diagnosed with someone who has bipolar, somebody who has anything, don't do that. Don't say, oh, they're just crazy, and then label them, and then just use their first name. Talk about them like they're a human being. Don't do that. All right. Yeah. So is this a myth or is this a fact? It is impossible to prevent a mental health condition. Oh, it is impossible. Not possible. It is impossible to prevent a mental health condition.
That's
a tricky one.
It's impossible.
A fact. Probably.
Impossible.
It's impossible to prevent a mental health.
So.
So
I'm a 9/11 survivor. Was it impossible for me to prevent a mental health condition?
No.
I see. Okay. See how you. Okay. I see how you break that like that. I'm like, okay.
I only thought about it.
So should I have had PTS? Should I have had acute anxiety, or could I have prevented that?
No.
Can't prevent that.
No. I mean
look what happened.
Can some people go through the same exact thing and not have a mental health condition from it? Yes. So some people can go through some things and not, and some people can go through some things and have it. Yeah. So it's kind of a tricky way to put the myth. So it is impossible to prevent. It is impossible to prevent. It isn't impossible to prevent. I honestly think it's a fact. Prevention of mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders focuses on addressing known factors, right?
Yeah.
So such as exposure to trauma that can affect the chances that children, youth, and young adults will develop mental health conditions. So, okay. So this one is very tricky. It's actually very tricky. So could I have prevented having PTS from 9/11? Sure. If I didn't go through 9/11, it was preventable.
Yeah.
I wouldn't spend my whole life not even knowing what PTS was like. Luckily for me, I never had PTSD, which is the actual disorder.
Yeah.
But I had the PTS. I had the post-traumatic stress for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I had survivor's guilt for 10 years. And I had all kinds of shit going on that I didn't know, that I didn't recognize, I didn't see as that. Until people with PTSD, combat PTSD, veterans who I sat around helping and doing and whatever, finally pointed it out to me one day when I was talking about something, and it kind of came out, and they're like, you see, finally, you're here. You're here. We've been waiting for your ass to tell you that you're one of us, and you need to stop coming in here. And he's like, no, they were really good about it. But because they had the PTSD, I had the PTS, I never made that connection until we made it together. Like, they knew. Right. I didn't. They didn't know that was the name of it.
Yep.
But but that's what it was. But was it preventable for me? Of course. Maybe had I not been at the Pentagon that day and had a plane come into all of that. Yeah, of course. But So it's tricky. It's kind of tricky.
Yeah.
Anyway, so promoting a person's social emotional well-being. So I think what they're trying to get at with this is some of the ways that you can prevent, because we are about prevention. So if I want to prevent a child from dealing with things as an adult, what am I going to want to do if I'm trying to prevent from them from suffering from mental health or mental disorders that would be brought on by something? So if they are being abused, it would bring on trauma. If they watch me ingest mood-altering substances and then they start ingesting mood-altering substance and then eventually it becomes addictive to them and now they have a disorder. Was that preventable?
Yes.
Yes.
Because you could have modeled healthier coping skills in front of them.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the same as somebody was born with addictive, biological markers and all that kind of stuff. And there was none around them or whatever. And then one day somebody offered them champagne or whatever. And then the next thing you know, this person is addicted.
Yeah.
Because that's, like what happened with a lot of our indigenous people. Like, that's just not something that just their system was able to.
Yeah.
They never had it, and then it got introduced, and now they have fetal alcohol syndrome with the children, all this kind of stuff that happened because of that. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tricky question. I think some of it is preventable, some of it isn't.
Yeah,
It just really all depends. It can get kind of hairy. Yeah. So, promoting a person's social emotional well-being leads to this, and this is why it's important to be a good parent. That's why you have to do your mental health before you have children, because then you're in the position where you can do these things that I'm about to say. You promote the child's social emotional well-being, which leads to higher overall productivity, better educational outcomes, lower crime rates, stronger economies, improved quality of life, increased lifespan, that's a big one, and improved family life.
Yep.
So that's what happens when you do prevention. So the opposite happens if you don't.
Right.
More likely. It doesn't 100%, but it's more likely to not happen.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know where we see that a lot? I don't know. What do you think, Kiki? We see that a lot in women, and I know that this happens to men too, but I know that there was a whole history in the 70s or 80s. They did a whole research on this where a lot of women that went into sex work and that were prostitutes. And it wasn't just sex work like they were in charge, they were doing, they were sex workers and they were safe and they went home and they were in charge. It was the kind of sex work that required abuse and degradation and unsafety. They were young. They were all kinds of stuff.
Like 14.
Yeah.
And they did all these studies, and it's like, when you look at their backgrounds and you look at their history, and was there sexual assault, and was there sexual molestation, and was dad, grandpa, uncle, cousin, whatever, doing things they shouldn't do, or was neighbor doing what he shouldn't do, what kind of life did mom and dad have? Because I know that there's a lot of stories where moms sold off their daughters as young people so that they can feed their drug habit, and they can, pay the rent or whatever. Like, these things happen. America doesn't want to talk about that, but it happens. This shit happens all the time. So then what happens to a 13 and 14-year-old that grows up around that, being treated like that? And what else can they do? And now, of course, they're disordered and they're all this. And then now they go and they think that makes sense for them to be further abused, or for them to be victimized by the fact that they're abused. And then they start taking drugs so that they can numb out the pain. And then what happens when you're doing that? Then, like, it turns into a whole thing. I'm not stereotyping, and I don't mean that this happens to everybody, but I'm telling you that when you look at certain circumstances, why some people can tolerate abusive, violent sex and other people are like, what? I can't. And some of them, you look at the stories and you understand. You get it. Like, it makes sense to you. Why? I get that now. So we're not judging anybody. We're just saying some sort of mental health related issues, like how you're taking care of yourself, what you're doing for yourself, are you living a happy life, how you're dealing with your emotions, have a lot to do with what could have been prevented around you. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. All right. I'm Debbie Downer today, and I don't know if you've noticed.
Have you noticed? I kind of noticed.
Today's Debbie Downer Day. Yeah. We're just going to have a big sign up here one day. Debbie Downer's in. Be careful. All right. Myth or fact? Mental health issues are rare.
Rare?
Yeah.
Myth?
That's a myth.
I'm saying myth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone has a mental
illness. Right. So mental health problems, this is the fact is that mental health problems are very common. Within one in 4 people globally experiencing a mental or neurological disorder at some point in their lives.
Yep.
Okay.
Right? So that's the truth. Like, so what do? You normalize that. Like you do the common cold, like you do, COVID, like you do anything and everything else in the medical world. You normalize that as being part of being a human instead of everything else that we're doing. Myth or fact? People with mental health issues are violent.
Myth. They're not always
We talked about that.
Yeah.
They're not. Can they be?
Yes, absolutely.
Are they usually?
No. It depends.
And are all people who are violent, do they all have a mental illness?
No.
No. Are the shooters that go around shooting people have a mental illness like they like to say? Most of them
No.
don't.
Just want to prove something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other things that's not right.
Yeah.
But do they actually have a diagnosable? Usually not.
That's usually the cop-out answer.
That's the
like,
cop-out
"No,
answer.
I have a mental illness.
Right.
Or that's the media.
You
or
wrote
those.
a manifesto. Be so for real.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
You're so
King Kong had a
intelligent.
mental illness.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that was good. I'm very proud of you guys. So the fact is that a large majority of people with mental health issues are not violent and are more likely to be the victims of violence, like I was talking about earlier. They are the ones that are somehow usually victimized by or as a result of having some sort of mental health condition. And if it's physical and you can see it, think about the way people treat people with Tourette syndrome. Because you can see that, right?
Right.
It's something. All right. So myth, fact, mental health issues are contagious. You can catch it.
Ooh.
How many times you don't know how many times I have heard that. You
I've
cannot
heard
be
that.
hanging out with them because,
I've heard-
girl, you're
heard
going to
it.
start.
Yeah, I've heard it.
I had
I've
someone
heard that.
tell me that depression is contagious, and let's just say we don't talk no more.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That is so silly.
Achoo. Now you got
Yeah,
it.
you got it now.
Oh, no.
Anxiety.
You got me.
Achoo, depression.
Oh, I wish it was that Doechii song instead. Oh, no.
Now, the fact is, you cannot catch mental illness from someone. It is not a physical illness that can be transmitted. It is a physical illness, but you don't sit next to me and suddenly now you have
So I got it now.
clinical anxiety.
Have fun. It's like,
No,
it's
you
your
take
problem now.
No. Myth or fact? There's no hope for recovery from mental illness.
That's
myth.
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 And yet a lot of people think that.
Which is so sad.
A lot of people, which is why they
Sometimes
give up
it
on
feels
people.
like a fact.
Yeah. Well, sometimes there are some things that you cannot recover from.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you have to live your life symptomatic.
Gotcha.
That's very different.
Yeah.
Because, I've had cancer. I had cancer here in my face, and I had to have surgery, and I have to go every year to get checked and all that kind of stuff. Not by anything that I did. Like, I was not the sun queen. I was not that person I need to be tan because I was tan, right? But I was,
And we're live.
And
Hi,
we're
guys.
live.
We're back. We had a little bit of I don't know, that was a little power outage or something.
That was God.
Somebody got mad that the myth was the myth.
I was like, TT with that BS together. Set her straight.
Oh my God. Okay, well, we're back and we're talking about myths and facts about mental health. So I think the last one was there's no hope for recovery from mental illness. Is it a myth or a fact?
Myth.
Myth.
Yeah, myth. It's a myth. The fact is that many, many people with mental health conditions recover completely. And even those with serious mental illness can live full and productive lives with proper treatment. And those are the people that, if they were able to get that proper treatment, wouldn't be the guy at the store that you were talking about with the issues and people treating badly, or the guy that I was talking about who's now homeless,
Right.
and people are scared of him and treat him bad, and now he's violent back because people are violent to him, and now he's the problem that the cops come and take away because that's their job, So, So, myth, fact. Children and teens don't experience mental health problems. We already talked about that one.
Yeah.
And that was very Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
That one was very, very...
Shit me.
Mental health issues can affect people of all ages, including children and teenagers. Early intervention and support is crucial. Period.
Absolutely.
Fact.
Period. I say that all the time.
Yeah.
I will die on that mountain, right on that hill.
There you go.
All right, myth.
The power's about to go out. You said that.
God, no. Myth or fact, you can't help someone with a mental issue if you are not a professional.
That's a myth.
What do you guys think?
You know what?
What are the non-clinicians?
No,
in here
that's what I'm
thinking?
saying. See, I feel like because I know. No, because I know. Because I know TZ was like, like you gotta,
Can I plead the fifth on that one? Yeah, like
See,
the
all right,
last
so
one.
So now
you say
listen,
help.
listen to what I'm saying. Listen to my word.
Okay.
I'll try.
Myth. You can't help someone with a mental health issue if you're not a professional, as opposed to you can't treat
Got it.
someone.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
We good. Now we're
Yeah,
good.
gotta
Go
break it
back.
down.
Now we're
Okay.
back.
Okay. Yeah, we're good.
I just had to get it. I had to get that word in.
Yeah.
All
right.
That's the difference. So the myth is that average people can't help somebody. Of course you can help somebody.
Yeah.
That does not mean you need to go into, clinician mode because you read a book or you watched a video or you're a YouTube person. Now you know how to you know how to do this. But it also doesn't mean that you can't help by watching those things.
That part.
Yeah, you just need to call the professional. Like, so if someone's having a heart attack,
Yeah.
Yep.
you're not gonna say, I ain't a doctor.
No.
I can't help. What are you gonna do? Let the guy flop around? You're not gonna do that, right? You're gonna
Right.
try to lift,
Yeah.
do the thing that you see on the
Yeah.
first aid thing that says to do or what
Right.
not to do.
Right,
Don't
right.
move him, whatever.
Not my heart.
Or someone's bleeding profusely. You know what to
Right.
do and what not to do. Or
Yeah.
it's sort of the same concept. Nobody's expecting you to be a clinician, but we aren't expecting you to be an idiot and a jerk and just let the person suffer indefinitely because you're
Yeah.
not.
All right.
Do something, even if it's call 911. Do something, or
Yeah.
call their titi, call their dad, call their
their
friend,
mom.
call somebody, call their person that regulates, and do something. And
Yeah.
but so you can help. The fact is that family and friends can be supportive by encouraging them to seek help, making them aware of resources. That's a big one, and offering understanding and empathy. God, how many times do I have to say that one?
Yeah.
A bunch.
Understanding and empathy, people. God, okay, myth. Or not. Asking about suicide will increase their risk.
So I'm not going to answer because I know the answer.
Oh, you do? Okay.
You guys should
Oh,
answer.
we're
Of
on
course
the spot.
yeah, of course I know the answer.
So asking about suicide, if somebody's suicidal or having suicidal ideation, will that increase their chance of committing suicide?
I don't.
Man.
Well, no, I don't think. I mean, if you're.
It's a hard one. If you don't know, it's a hard one. It's not easy because you want to be careful, right?
Right. So
wanna
if you
trigger
ask
somebody.
about that's the thing. All right. If you're asking about it, maybe
I
Just
don't
trying
know.
to
I
help.
feel if you ask me personally, I'm like, I'd rather you not ask me because now I'm gonna start thinking about it.
gotcha.
But are you going to act on it? Just because
They
somebody
ask
asked you.
Yeah.
It honestly depends how my head is that day.
Oh, okay.
All right. I'm gonna go out on a limb.
Fingers crossed.
Don't
I'm gonna say okay. I'm gonna say
Don't break your leg.
I'm gonna say myth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a myth.
Only reason why, because how you asked that question.
Yeah.
So it's like, but
That curveball.
right, but what you said had me nervous because I'm
Makes
like,
sense,
yeah,
'cause you don't know.
I don't know.
But you want to normalize the conversation.
Yeah.
That's the whole
So
thing.
what you don't want to do is, Ant is in one of his bad state of minds. Ant knows he's in that bad state of mind. He's having suicidal ideation. He's suicidal, which is different than ideation. I'm not going to go and say, you're fucking trying to kill yourself, aren't you? I know you want to kill yourself. Are you trying to fucking kill? Are you killing yourself? I'm not going to agitate the man more.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Like that's not what I'm going to do. So asking someone directly about suicidal intent can actually lower their anxiety,
Oh, okay.
open communication, and reduce the risk of an impulsive act. Because we're going to talk about suicide for a minute for everyone that's out there who might be feeling these feelings, or you might have someone around you who you're concerned about. So number one, 911, always, right? Seek help, emergency room, get help. Do it. There are people out there. There are, 988? I can't remember, which is the
98. Yep.
the call people that are trained that know how to help you figure this out. Do that. There's things to do, but suicidal ideation everyone has had. When I do my intakes, oh, my stomach is growling. I hope you can't hear it.
I can hear it.
Oh no, my stomach is
Just exposed
oh my
yourself.
God, I totally did. Okay, so when I do my intakes, one of the first things I tell everybody is, because we're mandate reporters and we have a mandate to make sure that if you're not safe or if someone around you is not safe, that we need to report that so that that's part of the mandate reporting. But we need to know that if you're going to kill yourself or kill somebody else, we need to intervene whatever way to save your life and save the life of people around you. So we ask about your suicidal ideation, suicidal tendencies, homicide, all of that to try to gauge it to see how much of that. But the reason people don't disclose that a lot at intakes is because they don't want you to call and lock them up, because they think that that's what you're going to do is lock them up. So I always tell my intake people that we have all had these feelings. We have all had these moments. We have all experienced these situations. We have all wondered. The homicidal stuff, all of us we have been in a state where we have said and looked very serious to somebody around us when we said, I'm going to fucking kill them. If I saw them in an alley, I am going to just shoot them in the head because you're that angry and you're that upset. If someone was to pick up the phone and call, oh no, mandate reporter, we have to report this is a problem. Immediately after hearing me say that, that would be problematic, because probably by this time tomorrow, I'm going to be re-regulated again and be like, oh my God, I really felt like I wanted to kill him. But the intention wasn't there. I wasn't intending, I wasn't planning, I didn't have the means, the ways, and all that stuff. That's very different, right? Now, who wants to take that chance? A lot of therapists don't want to take that chance. So they right away want to call, oh no, I have to report that this person said they might kill themselves. And then the person goes and gets, which works for people who are in crisis and are planning on doing that. But not everybody who's having these thoughts and feelings need to be, it's just a very touchy thing. So I always tell them it's normal. I don't want you to not come and tell me about it, because we've all had those feelings. We've all felt that way. That doesn't mean that we're going to do it. Where we get concerned about is that we've done our work with you. We've worked with you. We've listened to you. We've sat through those dark moments with you, and nothing is helping. And you have a plan. You have a date. You bought the gun. You have the medication. You're going to the school that day. You're going to the church that day. And then I have to call, and I have to have that intervention happen to keep you safe and everybody else safe. And then maybe we can start again later. Right? So I need to just make that disclosure that is the reality of our work, right? It's just, you just don't know. But on a day-to-day basis, if you're living with someone who like Ant was saying, he has his days, that does not mean that when I talk to him, that their immediate response is going to be, oh, that's it, you asked me, I'm going to now go jump off. Because first of all, you're acknowledging the pain. The majority of people who want to and I know this from the studies with veterans and the work of veterans and in general, almost always is either an impulsive act that happens because they're trying to get out of the pain. They're trying to get out of the psychological torture that they're in. They're trying to get out of whatever it is that the depression is lying to them about. Whatever it is, they're looking for an immediate relief from the thing that's happening right now, that they're feeling right now. But when they're feeling good, it's not when that they really want it. So if this thing goes into remission tomorrow, they're going to be like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't do that, because look at me, I'm happy. It's all very complicated for different people. So bringing it up to the majority of people is going to be a relief. For them. It's going to reduce the stigma. They're going to feel like, oh my God, when you're able to say, I've been there, I felt that way. I know what that feels like. You can talk to me. They're going to feel a little better about it. Other people, there's always going to be some people who that won't work with. I'm not saying that that's not the case. But the myth is that by automatically asking somebody that that's it, the increase. That's the myth.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if anything else, if all else fails and you don't have the courage or the confidence, then get somebody who does. There are people trained to do this, who can train you to do this. There are students like our lovely interns / mental health volunteers who know. They've been trained. They know what to do. There's always somebody around that can help you figure out how to manage this if you're scared and you don't want to. All right. So, myth or fact? Mental health issues are a sign of weakness.
Oh, that's a myth.
That is a myth.
That's
what do
a
you guys
myth.
think?
That's a myth.
Yeah.
But
also
let's be real.
depending on who you ask.
Yeah.
Depending on who you
the
ask.
fact.
They're like, hey now.
Man, quit crying. Do some push-ups or something.
That's it. Yep.
A lot of culture.
So isn't that a thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's definitely, and I'm going to speak from my experience as a Black woman, like definitely in the Black community.
Absolutely.
You're weak. Like, why can't, like, you're in bed all day, you're depressed. What even is depression? That's weak. Like, why can't you get yourself up? It's really just demeaning. It sucks.
Or we've heard this before. That's that white people shit.
Yes, that is nonsense.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so what are we saying? It's a myth?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because the fact is that mental health struggles aren't about weaknesses or character flaws. Environmental factors, genetics, and other stressors play a role, almost always.
Yep.
Just as we don't see someone with the flu as weak, mental health challenges don't define a person. Seeking help when struggling is a sign of resilience and strength. I cannot say that enough. The people who look for help, or who at least acknowledge that there is health and maybe one day I'll be ready to get help, or I'll be able to get help, or I may want help, is a sign of strength and resilience. The people who really, really don't see it that way are the ones that I feel have the character flaw. There's something about you that's making it real hard for you to understand that this is not a weakness. What is going on with you that you need to look at other people who have mental health issues going on and think that and feel that, even in the face of all the contradicting facts that that's not real, you still want to look at that person that way. And something is up with you. And I'm not judging you. I'm just saying you need to meet with yourself somewhere and really have a real good conversation with yourself about why is that more comfortable for you to believe that than to believe that, damn, that person's strong for wanting to get some help, or they have a mental health condition and they're really doing what they need to do,
Right.
you know, or at least they're being honest about it, you know, instead of hiding it, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's that. All right, so for many, there's an immense cultural, that's what we were talking about, pressure from loved ones and role models emphasizing hard work, even at the cost of suppressing emotional struggles.
Yep.
So pushing negative emotions aside only prolongs the amount of time that someone may deal with an undiagnosed mental health condition or disorder. I've seen that in my own family, in my immediate family, pushing it aside, overcoming it, and it's just the behavior gets worse, the thinking gets more distorted, and then the people around them are, no, it's not you, you're not the one with the problem. It's not like, when I can see, because I've known you since you were this teeny tiny, and I've watched you now grow into a man, I can see, I know what I'm looking at, I know what I'm talking about, but let's not believe that. Let's believe the people around you that are saying, I'm the problem. I'm saying things about you that aren't true. When I'm worried about you, you wouldn't be doing, saying, thinking, believing, surrounding yourself with any of this.
Right.
If you didn't have something going on with you, something's not right. What is it? Why are you comfortable with this? Why is this comfortable for you?
Right.
It shouldn't be comfortable for you. And I think that, unfortunately, it kind of goes back to the cultural pressure. Like that would mean I have to admit that as the man in the family, as the guy, as the whatever job I have, that I'm supposed to not have those things, or whatever it is that the guys on the street say, or my brethren say, or whatever the fuck. The women won't think I'm sexy, or whatever the thing is. You know, that's easier to kind of like absorb and live with. But then you're suffering inside. Internally. You're struggling inside. You're losing relationships. You're losing important things in your world, but it's not you. It's always the other person. When it's always a combination of everybody, because we all have shit, right? Like it's all of us together. Absolutely. We're all in that soup.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love soup.
Yeah. So seeking help and resources may instead be a powerful step towards healing. So not doing it does not make you weak.
Right.
Myth or fact. Counseling therapy is only for people with serious mental illness. I think we kind of
Oh yeah. We don't,
Yeah. That's
No.
I used to think that when I was
You used to
younger.
think that only
Like,
people
I'm not
with-
crazy. What's wrong with you?
Did you think that when you were younger? Was that like a thing around you?
I mean, crazy is such a crazy thing to say to someone. Like, you're being crazy. It's just like, oh no, I don't want to go to the doctors. You know what? Media makes you think if something is wrong, I'm going to be in a straitjacket in the padded room.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm going to be
With
sitting in a
depression
little
thoughts.
Lose my job.
And I mean, the media really made it funny. They were like, I'm going to be wearing the grippy socks, y'all. I'm going.
Yeah.
And that's kind of terrifying. Like,
It's terrifying because you don't want that. You don't want to be
Right.
the person they're dragging out.
Yeah.
You know, when you're having like a panic attack and nobody knows what's going on, and they
Right,
just think
right.
you're going postal, and then they drag you off into. Nobody wants that.
Right.
So it's a myth. Counseling or therapy is not only for people with serious mental illness. It is for people who are struggling with anything. If you're having a lot of stress that's work related, if you're having interpersonal relationships, that are problematic. If one of your children are just having trouble, is diagnosed with something, whatever's going on, if your husband's cheating on you, if your wife is cheating on you and is really affecting you because it's triggering other things about it, if somebody was abusive towards you and you did nothing, but there's this abuse that happened, even if it was just this one time, and you can't forget it. If you were in a car accident, if you were in a car accident, if you had food insecurity for a really, really long time, and now you don't, and now you notice you hoard, what's that? What's that? Our foster children used to do that all the time. Like my parents had a lot of foster kids, and it is just known. I don't know if you see this a lot in your do you the food insecurity? And like you would notice little things missing or whatever, and the next thing you know, it's like in the closet in the back behind the shoe thing. Yep. They have been taking the bread and the like leftovers and the chips and the cookies and sneaking it and hiding it in their room where they're staying as foster children, or in their little bags or whatever, because they're hoarding, because they don't know
if they're gonna have food
again. And this has been their life. Now, is that a mental health condition? Of course it is, because you're stressed out and you have anxiety. Does that mean that you're sick? No, it doesn't. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Big difference. All right, fact. Counseling and therapy can be beneficial for anyone. You don't have to have a mental illness to seek counseling or therapy. That's kind of silly when you think about it. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I guess because we're in the field, it kind of doesn't make any sense. But I guess when you're out and it's not, I don't know. Anyway, it can be beneficial for anyone, not just those with mental illness. While counseling and therapy is an essential tool for treating conditions such as clinical depression, absolutely. You cannot get over clinical depression without a proper treatment. It just does not go into remission. And clinical anxiety, many people find that it's also useful for navigating the daily stresses of life, including work and relationships, and the man who we shall not mention, whose name shall not be mentioned, and the stress that he's bringing upon the masses.
Yeah.
Of course they need somebody to talk to. People are losing their jobs. People don't know if they're going to have, their Medicaid, like their health. Like, of course they're freaking going into crisis. Of course they need counselors and therapists to help them. Counseling and therapy can be compared in some ways to the gym. J-Rock.
There you go.
If you exercise and lift weights frequently, your muscles will strengthen, right? With mental health, counseling and therapy helps your brain remold and shape new pathways and ideas. And that is very neurological. The neuroscience is there. That's exactly what it does. It does all that. It just kind of like redirects itself.
Yeah.
It's a powerful phenomenon known as neuroplasticity, which I just started learning at the tail end of my school because that's when the research was coming out. This is probably something they're teaching you guys regularly now. Yeah. That explains our mind's ability to evolve continuously and increases the brain's capacity to adapt and grow. So if you've been in this state for a really long time, dealing with this thing and this horrible situation at home that only like the chicken or the egg, am I this way because of them? Are they making it worse? But you go and you get help and all of these other things help your brain change. It actually changes. Yeah. And medication can help get you there.
It can.
But your mind has that ability. So the idea that it doesn't is very old fashioned because the neuroscience is there. It does. So we're almost done. Myth or not? If I've managed my emotions alone before, I don't need help now. Who does that sound like?
Me. You called me. You called me out. You called me out.
If I've managed my emotions alone before, I don't need help now. That's a myth. That's a myth. The fact is that many people often point to challenging times in their childhood when they have overcome incredible adversity without needing counseling and therapy or help from a doctor. However, evidence shows that experiencing numerous stressful situations early in life increases the likelihood that someone may experience mental health challenges. So if as children we're dealing with, that's where CPTSD comes from. Yeah. That's a new form of PTSD. Okay. It's not a new form, it's always been there. We've just always called it PTSD and it doesn't make sense because PTSD is about one experience. Right. Whether it's combat, PTSD, which is kind of a combination of both when you think of combat. Or PTSD usually happens sexual assault, rape, car accident, violent attack, like something, watching somebody die, almost watching somebody die. Yeah. Watching somebody take their last breath. Not like the pain, like it's this one incident and then now you have or like 9/11 didn't happen to me 25 times. It happened one day, one time, 1 hour. But in my brain was like going at it differently. It's just interpreting that differently. But anyway, so for me, the PTS makes sense. But CPTSD is about children or a person who has chronic experience with something that's traumatic, whether it's small or big. It's just always chronic stress, chronic major stressor, like disrupting scary stuff, and chronic trauma of some sort. So what's a good example of a child that went through something like that who now as an adult has CPTSD?
Probably like a kid who is constantly seeing violence in their household, like family violence, domestic violence, and it continuously continues, or the hypersexuality that happens. You're constantly there. So you constantly see it, no matter how old you get. It's the same cycle in your household because, you know, those are your parents. And if the system doesn't step in, that's all you know. And so now as an adult, you're either really hypersexual, or you're scared of sexuality, or you're just terrified of like violence or loud noises. All of those things just help trigger more mental health symptoms.
So when people come in, and I get a lot of this, I get a lot of women that come in and say, I have PTSD. That, you know, everybody's self-diagnosis now. I've been married for like 10 years and this, that, and the other, and they self-diagnose. I know I have PTSD, and this is why my relationships have this problem and that. And my husband and I and my children. And really, after I do all the work and do the history and do the biological and social, what they really do have is CPTSD, which stands for complex post-traumatic stress syndrome, where PTSD is just post-traumatic stress syndrome. So complex makes it that their trauma is very complicated, because not only now do they have a husband who has this tendency of doing this one thing, and it's being interpreted by her as potential violence and potential whatever. And really he's not. He's just leaving his coffee cup somewhere, like where she doesn't like it, but she's interpreting it as like a sign of whatever. So when you look at everything and you go back and then you do her history and everything, then you realize and you recognize this person as a child was consistently being intimidated, being put in closets, being told not to speak or they would get violently, punished. They wouldn't have food. They would be deprived of whatever it is that they need. They would be humiliated. They would be all kinds of terrifying things. Sometimes it included sexual assault. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it includes not eating for a week. Sometimes it includes just constant throughout their whole life growing up. And now they're gone and they're away from it and they didn't do that work. And now they're having, relationships and children and whatever. And all of this stuff is sort of like kicking up again. But they think now, that's PTSD. No. And why is it important? The reason it's important, because it's all stressor, right? It's all stressor and it's all trauma, and we all kind of come from the same place treating it. But the treatment and the way I would go about dealing and helping with her, my client that came in with that, is going to be different than my veterans that come in, who very specifically have MST PTSD, which is military sexual trauma, PTSD from military sexual trauma. So my veterans that come in, men and women that come in with that is very different than me treating them with PTSD, me treating them for PTSD that they got from having been attacked on one theater that they went to in combat once. Like, it's going to be a little bit different than the MST, the military sexual trauma, because that's so much more complicated psychologically, because these are the people who are supposed to be protecting you. This is your troop. These are your guys. These are your people. This is your team. This is your whatever. And then this happened, and I couldn't get away. And then I had to go the very next day and go fight the enemy with my own enemy. So it just is sort of like a different. So anyway, we're saying all of this just to say that as children, these things develop, and it's important as adults to recognize it. And again, intervention may have helped, right? DSS,
things could have happened. My mentee, she's only 12, and she just got diagnosed with
CPTSD.
Yeah, she has PTSD from the specific incident. But because the cycle has stuck in her mind, any little thing like loud noises or someone yelling at her will immediately put her in a state of anxiety and like she'll panic.
Hypervigilance,
And she's like, why are people yelling? And it just sets her back.
It does.
And so we're working on it.
Yeah, you got to work on it. And the thing is that it is treatable. And I'm like, one of the things when my clients come in that I have to be very cognizant of is where they want to sit. Like, they assume because my chair is on that side over there that I'm going to sit there, and then you see them sort of mulling around and sort of like not sitting anywhere really. And,
okay.
and then I'm like, you can sit wherever you want. And the reason for that is because they want to see the door.
Yep.
They want to see that they can get out.
Okay.
They want to see who's coming in. They're very hyper vigilant about what's going on.
I see.
And you see that in people who have PTSD. You'll see that with people who have CPTSD.
Yeah.
You see that.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it. They want to see. They want to know.
Right.
And a lot of people do have that. And then people who are in certain jobs.
Oh yeah.
You know, they did people who have been EMS and police officers and fire and all those. They want to see. They want to see what's coming at them. So so it's important to recognize that mental health, like physical health, is not static. Think of seeking mental health care in the same way we see a doctor for a sprained ankle or a painful back. That is the easiest way for me to do it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't take care of that, I don't know, infection you have, you're going to end up with gangrene and you're going to lose that foot. And you got to think about it the same way.
Yeah.
The sooner we address the problem, the faster we will be able to return to action. And importantly, understand how to avoid injury in the future. This not happen again. So why do the sex workers who do the violent sex work with the people who abuse them, who like sort of like get into this cycle of self-sabotage, self-abuse and all that, maybe if there's some help that comes before that, to intervene, then maybe if they do choose to do sex work, it won't be in that area where it just sort of inflicts the same injury over and over again because they will have taken care of that injury and they're not doing the things that happen to you when you experience that. You sort of replay it and relive it because you're wanting to see a different outcome.
Right.
That's what you're trying to control, and it never is a different outcome. So seeking help means that I have to take medication. Myth? Fact?
Myth.
What do you guys think? What have you learned about that? Before you met us, what did you think? Seeking help means I have to take medication.
I'll say myth.
I'm myth on that.
That's a big myth. I don't know why people think that, but I guess, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to guess, and I should know. But, the fact is that treatment of mental health is highly individualized. Medication can be effective for some, but it is also not the only option. Even when medications are used, they are not magical in improving mental health. Most clients experience the most benefit when medication is used along with other things like counseling, therapy, lifestyle changes, mindfulness practice, different things for different people. The key is to finding out what works best for you. That's what's important, and that the conversation has to take place with a licensed mental health clinician. Why do I say that, Jason?
I know why you say it. Gotta have that license again.
You haven't been here. Licensed. Before anybody diagnoses you, treats you, tells you what you have, what you don't have, what anybody else has, what they don't have, what you should do, what you shouldn't have, are they licensed? They can be mental health counselors and not be licensed. They can be coaches not licensed. They can not mental health licensed. They can be anything. If they're not licensed, they cannot diagnose, treat, or help cure you or help you go into remission. So do that. Big chip on shoulder with that one, J-Rock. always. You'll learn.
Chip.
I have big chip. All right, so we'll just go through the rest. There's just two more, and then we'll be done. All right, so myth, fact, medication will change who I am or make me feel unlike myself. That's tricky. That's a tricky one. I'll give you a hint.
Hey, it's tricky. That's the hint.
That's the hint. It's tricky.
Tricky? Oh, okay. So it could be either or. All right, okay.
Hey,
That is the hint.
C.
here's the
C for every, all the
Here's
above.
the hint. It could be either answer.
All the above.
It's multiple choice. That's the hint.
Cheaters.
All the above.
Medications will change who I am or make me feel unlike myself. Is that a myth?
Maybe.
No.
I don't know.
Don't it
It's
depend?
tough.
Don't it
because
depend on
it does depend.
Okay.
And it's tough because certain medication, the whole goal is to help you like regulate yourself. But if you yourself is like, I don't know. My best example is my cousin has ADHD. He's a very hyperactive kid and he always bounces around. But when he takes his medicine, it's like a whole new kid. He's way calmer, more relaxed. It's not the same energy.
Right.
But he's still him. But it
it's-
changed him.
yeah.
So it's hard to say because, medicine has power to make you feel like you're not yourself. But, I mean,
Yeah, it's a hard one because sometimes the fact that you're symptomatic, that might not be who you really are.
Exactly. That too.
Maybe the real you isn't that. We don't know. But it feels like it, right?
Yeah.
Because that's who I know myself to be.
Right.
And who am I as a clinician to tell you who the real you is, right?
That
I'm not
part.
you. I'm not inside of you. But it's tricky because if you're living a painful life suffering, yet you're feeling like yourself, I'm going to want you to be medicated if that's what's going to help you not suffer and live a good life. But then you're going to feel empty because now you're not as creative and hyper as you used to be before, and you can't write these big, long, dramatic things that you used to be, and you don't feel music the same way, and you don't have sex the same way, and whatever it is that changes the you that you identified with before is not there anymore. So it feels like it changes you. It feels so. I think it's a tricky one because no, it doesn't. It doesn't change you. I don't think, and I'll talk about what the fact is. But does it change how you see yourself and feel and behave? Yeah, it kind of does.
Yeah.
Because that's the point,
absolutely.
like you said, right? And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it depends on the person.
Right.
It depends on the person.
So I know a lot of people who are bipolar and refuse to take medication and or are on medication and get really, really well. And because they're feeling really, really well, they don't need the medication anymore. So they think. Then they get off of the medication and then they go down. Like it's very confusing for them.
Right.
And then you ask them why and they'll tell you that. I just don't feel like myself. It's not me. I can't. It's very valid.
It is.
But then yourself, you, me, the real you is killing you.
Right.
You know, it's or someone's gonna kill you. Like we don't want that.
Right.
So it's all very confusing. So the fact is, having an open conversation about mental health has multiple benefits, right? So not just for the people who struggle with the mental health challenges, but also for the community. Hearing others, such as parents or mentors, talking about mental health can serve to reduce the stigma. So on the other hand, ignoring the concerns, what happens? Seldom makes them disappear. Whether checking in with a friend or visiting, licensed mental health, just verbalizing the emotions is really the first step. So I just want to make clear, whether it's a myth or not, that talking about mental health makes things, oh wait, I skipped, I'm sorry. That's my fault. The fact is that licensed mental health clinicians often hear from clients that they worry that medications will change who they are. Medications aim to reduce your symptoms. I think that is the important part. Medications do not change you. They change your symptoms. Whatever your symptoms were, they either disappear, they go away. And that's what you're talking about with the ADHD.
Yeah.
All his symptoms go away.
Yeah.
So he's not really a new kid. It's just the symptoms of the ADHD is gone. But he feels like it's not him. Or you feel like it's not him.
So does everyone else.
And everybody
You're so
else.
used to it.
Yeah.
You're like, that's not you.
Yeah. But they reduce the symptoms. They don't change who you really are fundamentally down inside. Nobody can do that. You can't. That's who you are. Like that. That's you. That doesn't change. Finding the right medication takes time and it involves trial and error. That's the part that can be really kind of hard on people. And your doctor to get the best results with minimal side effects. It does take work. I work with my people a long time before they get it right. Sometimes it's hit or miss. Sometimes it's like right away.
Yeah.
I'm one of those lucky people that when I had to take it after 9/11, the 10 years after and all that, mine worked right away. And then I was able to get off. I was very lucky, and I had an excellent psychiatrist and counselor who did their job. And so I feel like that really, the science behind that combination is true,
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it. That's the end of it. And then what I was babbling on before, we already said. All right, so basically, what are the key takeaways here?
Ooh.
There's a lot of myths.
A lot of myths. Yeah. There's a lot of myths out there. Man.
So mental health can be difficult to define in a single word, because in the beginning, Aunt, we were saying, how do you define mental health
You
and what
really
is it?
can't.
And it can be hard. There's no single word or sentence. It can be even more challenging to express your emotions if cultural or societal norms do not encourage open expression, like in our cases, right? So for many, the myths underlying mental health and the treatment of mental illness can contribute to delays in getting treatment and building coping skills. Challenging these myths and talking about feelings, whether positive or negative, really do normalize mental health as an active practice, which is what we need to relearn. You know how you say you have to unlearn things? That's one of the unlearning things that we have to do. So it's like lifting weights to strengthen your muscles. The more you talk about it, the more you learn about it. And this is a good thing, like a good chance, like when you started the podcast, where are you from that time to you are right now when it comes to mental health? Where's that muscle?
Oh man, it's up there. I wouldn't say I'm still beginner, but like I don't want to say advanced beginner, but like
Intermediate.
there we go, intermediate. So it's like the things that we talked about I can recognize like some of the patterns and the things that I think about, and it's like, oh, I remember that because we've talked about that. Okay, and then it kind of, when I write it, I'll either write it down or I'll like say it in my phone on my recorder. Listening back to it, I'm like,
that makes sense.
makes
yeah.
a lot
So
of
then
sense.
that muscle that we're talking about has been. Does that mean that you have a mental health issue?
No,
Does that mean that you likely will have one?
I don't know.
No.
I don't know. Yeah.
So I think I think the chances are, whether you get one or not, I think the point is that if you think that you might, your chances of doing intervention now so that it never becomes something diagnosable is more likely.
More likely. Yeah. For
Right?
sure. Absolutely.
And that's why we say exercise that muscle.
Yeah.
Because if I'm feeling like I can't get out of bed for 2 weeks and I'm not eating and I'm irritable and I'm all the things that come from clinical depression.
Yeah.
And I know, oh God, it's coming. It's been 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Then I know to get up and do something about it. I call my guy. I talk to my guy. I do the intervention part so that I don't want to meet the criteria of the DSM again for clinical depression. Like ever again in this lifetime, I never want to meet the criteria for PTS ever, ever, ever again. And if you're in my life and you're making me feel like that, like I'm going there, one of the things that I do is eliminate you. I eliminate you because I will never again in this lifetime want to ever be in a situation where my PTSD or my PTS can become diagnosable again.
Right.
And you know what that means. That means that there's all this criteria in the DSM that I have to meet in order for somebody to say, you may not have PTSD, but you have PTS. And these are all why. And then they just all of the symptoms are there, all the criteria. I now meet all the criteria for PTS because you're acting like an asshole. And you've just triggered me, or I'm in a situation where I could get rid of the situation so that I'm not triggered to be there again.
Right.
That's what mental health knowledge does for you. Where before I never would have known that. I would have just been swimming around in it until somebody takes me to the doctor and they're like,
oh.
girl, you have, don't you know, like I did the first time after 9/11. So I think that that's what's important. So your takeaway is that you have more knowledge now than you did before to be able to even assess for yourself if you need to change something.
Right.
Or you need to do something more. Yeah. All right, what about you? What you learn? What's your
I
takeaway?
need help.
He's been holding on to that.
They got a lot of stuff to unlearn and unpack as Jesus.
Yeah, every time he comes here, he's like, that damn Titi. I just came to do a comic section podcast.
And I think of my life, I'm like, dang, I really screwed up my life.
No, because remember what we said before. It does not mean that you need help necessarily. I just think that the way we respond to the stressors, how we let ourselves get taken down by the stressors. Sometimes we don't have a choice; it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
Other times we can do something about it, and that's what the message is.
Right.
Learn the myths and the facts, so that when you can help yourself or help somebody around you, it's much more effective than if you're running around believing, oh no, if I ask them how they're doing, that's gonna make them want. No. Maybe that's not the case. So. I think the fact that you sit here, Aunt, through these not so comfortable podcasts sometimes, knowing that you have feelings and episodes and situations says more about your resilience and your ability to overcome and do good for yourself than it doesn't. Because most people wouldn't.
Right.
They would not sit. I'm telling you, most people would not sit and listen to like minute one of me. They would turn me off and shut me out and tell me she talks too much shit. But people who can sit through any conversation about any of it. What do you think about that, Kiki?
Well, I respect anyone that's willing to sit and learn and be open to mental health and kind of how that impacts their life. The fact that anyone really sits, listens, and wants to learn is already the first steps of prevention.
Yeah.
So, I hear if I do X, Y, and Z, then I could possibly prevent myself. Or, I just heard Ziamora talk about, if you journal when something is hard, then I can regulate.
brain.
Yeah. So it's like is huge. Just knowing the steps and just knowing the thoughts really helps.
And the fact that your body doesn't automatically shut down.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens to people who are like when they're in their symptoms.
Yeah.
It just triggers them, they shut down.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I've done that, and people around me have done that. The minute somebody starts talking about something that they shut down, they don't want to. I'm not ready. Your brain, your body can't absorb it.
Right.
So you don't. But the fact that you do, you sit here and listen to me rattle on, babble on about everything, and you're like, okay, you're fine. You're fine. All right, guys. So that's it. What about you, Kiki? What's your takeaway from today?
I know a lot about mental health.
Yeah, you know more than you thought, right?
Yeah. I mean, I again, it just re-energizes me to come into this field because I know so much and I know so little, and there's so much I'm ready to learn and conquer and help future clients tackle in their own journey, in my own journey, because I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm going to need my own therapist too.
Yeah,
so we're in this together.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. And that's it. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening, and take care of your mental health. Good night.
Night.
Thanks for listening to the X Podcast with me, Xiomara Sosa, clinical mental health counselor, licensed professional counselor here in South Carolina. We hope you enjoy our real conversations about all things related to mental health. You can check out our show notes for reference, resources, and other show-related information. If you found value in our conversation, we encourage you to join us weekly as we discuss different mental health topics. You can head over to the X Podcast website at www.studiotalkpodcast.net and send us a message from there, as well as sign up for our newsletter. Our email address is studiotalkmentalhealth@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to our podcast and leave us a rating and review at blueberry.com/studiotalkmentalhealth. And send us a text or call us at area code 843-695-9974. Please recommend our podcast to your friends, colleagues, family, and networks. Thanks for supporting us.